Who are these people who are running the world into the ground? I don't think will have much problem convincing anyone that for things to go the way they're going, those in charge must be crazy. And they are psychotics. And here is what's going on with them. The basic reason the antisocial personality behaves as he or she does lies in a hidden terror of others. To such a person, every other being is an enemy to be covertly or overtly destroyed, even if this means their children. The fixation is that survival itself depends upon keeping others down or keeping people ignorant. If anyone were to promise to make others stronger or brighter, the antisocial personality suffers the utmost agony of personal danger. They reason that if they are in this much trouble with people around them weak or stupid, they would perish should anyone become strong or bright. Such a person has no trust to a point of terror. This is usually masked and unrevealed. When such a personality goes insane, the world is full of Martians or the FBI, and each person met is really a Martian or an FBI agent. But the bulk of such people exhibit no outward signs of insanity. They appear quite rational. They can be very convincing. Please don't ever make the mistake of thinking that these people are like you are. Please don't ever make the mistake of thinking the poor dear is misunderstood and just needs a break. These people are psychopaths. They want to kill you, either quickly or slowly. In the past, the worth of individuals or groups was judged by the amount they owned. If a man had money, he was said to be worth so much money. If a group had control of property, it was said to be worth so much control of property. However, this is a non-survival definition. Whereas every individual should be entitled unconditionally to whatever he can earn in a society, since this is a blunt measure of his value to the society, and one should never make the mistake of believing otherwise. And by means of inheritance and strange effects to which money can lend itself, it can become badly perverted as a yardstick. When it becomes perverted, men of money begin to be damned by a society and are sought out as the scapegoats for all of its ills, whereas a goodly number of them are the very pivots on which the society is turning. Subversive political movements appeal to the indigence and poverty, which is the lot, unfortunately, of a majority of populaces in these days of poorly advanced culture, by promising to murder every man of property once the land is taken. The whole cult of anti-capitalism is something less than a sound philosophic postulate, and rather more a gross appeal to those who have no property and no hope of attaining any. As this philosophy has no concept of any individual worth of whatever kind, and rather tends to operate on the maxim that 5 morons make a genius, it can afford to overlook any means of evaluating any human being and would rather not do so, since its practice when entering a country is to corral and murder every man of worth to that country and leave it pauperized as a race. Many low-toned people blatantly pride themselves on their honesty, in quotation marks, and so license themselves to make destructive statements for the good of somebody else, which are actually lies. There is an ethic about the handling of truth. While it may be true that something is undesirable or that a person is bad, it serves no good purpose to make the statement. The issuance of this truth is in reality the establishment of a destructive communication line. Here we would have a preference for artfully twisted facts which hide a desire to destroy. We would have a failure to select facts, to evaluate them one way or the other, but a preference for hopeless facts. Here we achieve the ultimate reversal in facts. Any white fact will be turned into a black fact. Here we have the blatant and destructive lying. Did you ever hear an angry man tell the truth? Here truth receives her severest drubbing, for here truth is confused, upset, used, twisted, and hidden for fear somebody may make retaliation. Until one understands that data from this level on the tone scale has only two purposes: to wreak the most harm upon others and secure the greatest safety for self. Here we have lies used to hide lies amidst the most frantic protestations of honesty, and a noisy advertising campaign about the ethics of the speaker. Beneath the facade of honor, honesty, ethics, and one sacred word, politicians, one is apt to find a writhing cesspool of vicious and malicious lies calculated to do the greatest possible damage, politicians. Early in the study of this, which resulted in this chart, the length to which the low-tone person would go in advertising his virtuous character while performing his knife-in-the-back tricks were not wholly understood. Because such persons said so often that they were honest and ethical, it was for a while accepted that a person could be at this low level on the tone scale and still be able to tell the truth. Experience demonstrated that, whatever the advertisement of honesty, the low-tone person is completely incapable of truth, but lies out of some horrible mechanical compulsion. Not one of the people for whom this allowance was made succeeded in being worthy of it, but each was discovered to be so deeply enmeshed in chicanery, all the while appearing honest, that the depth to which aberration can suppress man for the first time were clearly understood. Bluntly, anyone takes his life and his reputation in his hands when he believes a low-tone person, no matter what the evidence. In this band we have fantastically accomplished actors who may weep, plead, and decry with contempt and disdain, asserting their honesty and their sincerity, and demonstrating them with such consummate conviction that even the most critical observer may be unable to detect the slightest falsehood. And yet, a deep and exhaustive inspection of motivations and goals reveals a snake pit of lies and insincerity, of pretenses and unrealities. Such people can turn on tears and other emotions at will, and use the language of highest honor to serve the most despicable ends. A little lower down we have no less dangerous, but certainly more obvious levels of untruth. Just as fear drives these people, grief drives the lower down, and while the grief itself may be perfectly honest, the facts and evaluations which it collects to itself certainly are not. Here we have an individual who is making a cry for help, supplications, pleas for pity. All facts stand magnified. The dead are found to be utterly without faults. The lover who abandoned a sweetheart is found to be a black-hearted villain. This person may be given sympathy, but not believed. People who are commonly in this band of the tone scale and are yet able to reason somewhat to carry on some of the routine of life are perilous to be around, since they demand enormous quantities of affection, and at the slightest rejection, fancied or real, dive in the direction of death, perhaps only as a demonstration of how badly they need aid, but nevertheless fatally. Such dives toward death inevitably affect others, since this individual has no responsibility of any kind towards other human beings, and it is so thoroughly introverted that however pathetic he may appear, he only absorbs and never responds. He is an ever-thirsty sponge for sympathy, and he is a chronic potential suicide. The tendency towards death will communicate itself towards all the aspects of life around this individual. He will make destruction out of any matter. He will prefer sordid and squalid quarters. He will drive ancient and rickety cars. He will dress only in the most ragged clothes. All these things are pleas for pity. He is near the end of the road by contagion. He much more markedly interbulates people around him. The lowest point on the scale for a life organism is, of course, pretended death, and here is an untruth among untruths, where the organism is obviously alive, and it is saying that it is dead. But the untruth is here modified by the fact that the organism requires but the slightest thrust to be dead in actuality. This society in general has no knowledge of these people and these principles. And psychiatrists, psychologists don't know anything about this technology. But you could be married to one of these people and your life will be a living hell. These kinds of people are found in the judiciary and the police and at government counters. And they could be repaired, but the fact that they exist in large numbers and no one knows they're there, it changes the flavor of the force. And if you just knew that someone was one of these creatures, it would give you some relief. And they're very bad for business. They can destroy a business. They can destroy a marriage. They can destroy children just by the way they operate. And they're not seen to be anything out of the ordinary. But they are very far out of the ordinary, and one of the reasons things don't work well here, especially if they wind up in charge of you or on your communication lines. Early on in my fourth way school training, I don't know if I read this or if a teacher told me this, but the line is, if you knew how many dead people were in charge of your life and the world, you would go insane. And one of the dangers of, quote, working on yourself and becoming more conscious is getting to a place where you can see that and not having any venue to get some help or get out of it. I remember being in a bar in the worst part of town here in 1970, I would say, and everyone in the bar was dead. They were completely solid, mechanical automatons. And it was a little bit frightening. It's the first time I ever saw that. And if the whole world was like that, it would be like being in a horror movie. Especially when they start moving around. That may be what those Evil Dead movies are dramatizing. But dead people are in charge of your licenses and your permits and your traffic tickets, and a lot of the doctors I see are completely asleep and dead. Very scary, and they're in charge of your life. And every doctor has huge malpractice insurances because malpractice happens very often, unfortunately. So there are many things to look out for in this world. And right now, this New World Order takeover, if you look at the beingness of the beings, what you're looking at is sleeping psychotics. They live in a completely different world, perception-wise. And there isn't one jolly fellow among them. They don't have a personality leader because nobody there has any personality. They are psychotic automatons, and they don't know that, and we are unaware of that and forgiving them or seeing them just as other people like us, and they are not like us. And they're not like us enough that you wouldn't have to say that they are full of reptilians or hybrid aliens or being controlled by hybrid aliens. They're simply psychotic. And if someone's psychotic, you are the enemy. And if you're a child and your mother's psychotic, you're the enemy. Or if you're normal and your child is psychotic, you're the enemy. So you can't hope for an easy time of it if you're living with the enemy. And this is called, if you can't see it's there, it's called covert hostility. And if you go to a dictionary and look up hostility, like two tribes who want to fight with each other, or Russia and America during the Cold War, they were hostile towards each other and out front about it. Covert is when it's hidden. And it's much more damaging when it's hidden. And that's part of the attraction of it for them. They just love that. They're sticking it to you and you don't know that you're having it stuck to you, but your life doesn't go as well as it could and should, and you have no reason for knowing why. And they just love that as well. So I've always wanted to do something with this material. I have much more material available to me and you. This revelation of information that you're not supposed to have. It's all available. You can buy it from Amazon, but you have to know it's there. So it's part of the game of no, we didn't keep it away from you, but you didn't know about it. So too bad. It's up to you to protect yourself from these psychotics, and how you do that is by being straight and honest and powerful and ethical. And they may want to get you, but they'll be too afraid to attack you. This is what's with straight people, with the house and the mortgage and the job and the happy kids and going camping on the weekend. They stay away from drugs and hookers and low-tone crap and criminals, and they don't invite these vibrations into their life. And the main thing that has destroyed the community, I believe, is television. Taking up your time and flowing into your life, stress and violence, disguised as entertainment. There are no more neighborhoods. Behind my house here, there was a guy, Oriental family, with a $60,000 SUV, and he was cranking it over and cranking it over and cranking it over and trying to start it. And this is after he spent hours changing the tire. And I walked over and said, "Do you need a jump start?" And he said, "Yeah." But he never thought of asking me, his neighbor, "Could you jump start my car?" He was quite surprised I would do that. No sense of community. And we would all be safer if there was neighborhood communities like there used to be. When I was a child, there was 2 child molesters in my neighborhood, and one night I saw the dads going out at 9 o'clock at sundown, wearing their slippers, carrying baseball bats. And the next morning, the child molester's house was empty and the doors were open. And then a few days later, there was a for sale sign, and the house was sold, the furniture was taken out. And there was another guy in a lemon yellow Lincoln Continental convertible offering young boys rides and taking them and raping them. And we told the police about this, and they found him. Not hard to find, lemon yellow convertible Lincoln Continental, and he disappeared. Nothing was said. Something was done. If that happened now, all the fathers would be put in jail for assault, and the child molester would probably be put on a government pension for the traumatic stress syndrome he got from the assault. So there you have some stuff that you didn't have before. Please take it and run with it. And remember, when you were a child, you could just look at somebody and you knew they were completely effed up. You can still do this if you open your eyes. And that impression is always true. Children know immediately. Children and dogs know immediately if someone's nutso. So you need that talent back. Maybe your boss, maybe your wife, maybe your brother, cousin, best friend, someone at the club, someone who gives you the finger when you're driving. Could be anybody. 2.5% of the population is the raving, out and out psychotic type, and they control or cower about 20% of the population. So if you take your city and take 2.5% of it, you'll know how many serious psychotics you have within 50 miles of you.